Hi, I'm Leadfingers, and I'm going to show you how to flash the new 4.4 Street League hex with boost mode enabled. So let's boot Betaflight and get started. So we're going to start in Betaflight here. We're not quite ready to flash the hex yet, but we need to find out exactly which flight controller we're trying to flash the hex to. So if we go into Betaflight, we will see up here in the top left, T-Motor F7. That's our exact flight controller. Another way you can do it, you go down to the CLI and you type in version, enter, and you'll see it right here, board name T-Motor F7. We need to take a note of that name because we're going to need it to find the hex for our flight controller. So I'm going to go to my web browser of choice and I'm going to go to streetleague.io. You can also find the link in the video description. Once I'm on the front page, I'm going to go to the spec drop-down menu and click Rules and Quick Start Guide. We're going to scroll down to Spec Software and click Download. This is going to open a Google Drive that contains all of the Street League hexes. There is every single hex for every single flight controller that Betaflight supports in here. Also, there's a readme.txt that I'm going to go over most of the details in here, but if you need a refresher, I really recommend giving this a read. It's very, very complete. But we need to navigate to this folder. Right now it's v1.2.0. If we make any updates or bug fixes to the hex, this number might change a little bit, but you're going to want to click on this folder and you're going to find a list that contains every single hex for every single flight controller that's supported by Betaflight. We made them all. And now we got to go find our specific flight controller. So you gotta carefully look through the list, but it's organized by first the type of processor and then the name of the board. So I know I have a STM32F7X2 T-motor, and I'm gonna find my T-motor F7 hex. I right-click the hex and I click download. Now we're gonna reopen Betaflight and we're gonna navigate to the update firmware tab. Once we're on the Update Firmware tab, we're going to go right here and we're going to click Auto Detect. If this does not bring up your flight controller, you have to go through this drop-down menu and select the correct target for your flight controller. You must do this before you load your local firmware. Do not do this after you load your local firmware. Make sure you do it before. This is when Betaflight decides what custom defaults it's going to flash to your flight controller. So I'm just going to state it one more time. You must have this drop-down menu, select it with the correct flight controller before you load your local firmware to flash your Street League hex. Now that we have the correct flight controller selected in this drop-down menu, we can load firmware local, click the hex that we just downloaded, and flash the firmware. All right, our firmware has successfully flashed. We're going to connect to our board, and oh no, it looks like our custom defaults did not properly apply. If the pop-up menu comes up, apply custom defaults, click yes, always do that if it pops up. But if you're in the same situation as me, where none of your custom defaults were applied, so there's no gyro, this is how you fix it. We are going to note the name of our board, T-Motor F7, and we are going to go to a link that is in the video description that brings you to all of the custom defaults for Betaflight targets right now. That is this link right here. We're going to scroll down until we find the T-Motor F7. All right, I found my T-Motor F7 right here. I'm going to click on it, and it's going to bring me to this text document. I'm going to highlight the entire text document. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to Betaflight. I'm going to go to the CLI, and I'm going to paste it. I'm going to press enter. Sometimes there's a couple of errors, but that's usually just fine. I'm going to carry on. I'm going to hit save, enter. And my flight controller is going to reboot. Now that my flight controller is rebooted, I'm going to connect to it. I'm going to close it, and we're going to check to make sure it's working properly. Seems like my accelerometer is working. All of my ports are in the ports tab. My gyro is working properly. It looks like I just applied my custom defaults. This flight controller is ready to configure so I can go race. Now I want to show you how to set up all of the boost mode features that we have added into the new Street League Hex. The first one, and most importantly, is how you activate boost mode. To activate boost mode, we have hijacked the beeper mode in Betaflight. So whenever I activate my beeper, while armed, it's going to activate boost mode. So I'm going to make sure to have my beeper mode set up on a momentary switch or something that's easy for me to reach while flying. There's also an OSD element for the boost mode that I would like to add. So we're going to go over to the OSD tab, and again, we've hijacked an existing Betaflight feature for our uses in this case. So you're going to want to select battery usage graphical remaining and this bar. This bar is no longer a battery drain bar. It is now a boost mode bar. So I'm going to put it at the bottom of my screen right here because that's where I like to have my boost mode. And now that those two new features are set, this flight controller is ready for me to configure with whatever custom settings I like to use on my personal quad so that I can go race. You don't need a throttle cap. You do not need motor output limits. All you need to do is flash this hex and you are ready to race in any Street League event. And it's that easy to make sure that your quad is street legal and ready to race at the next event. I'll see you on the racetrack.